Please be seated. Our scripture reading this morning is from Matthew 7:13 and 14. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Jim. A couple of years ago, Wayne Blasingame and I had the occasion to hike a peak in Colorado known as Quandary Peak. It's one of a series of mountain ranges that are at least 14,000 feet in elevation, so they call them 14ers. I'd never done anything in Colorado, to hike anything, so it was a challenge to me. I was ready to go and ready to try it. It was about 3,000 feet of climb. We didn't start at zero and go to 14,000. We started at about 11,000 and going up to 14,000. So my thought was, how hard can it be? It's, by my calculation, about 3 miles round trip, so 2 hours up, 1 hour back. Ladies dropped us off in the parking lot, pick us up, in about 3 hours we'll be good to go. It's about 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock. So we start on our way, and I quickly find out, first of all, that the trail is not paved. The trail is not even pressed caliche. It is rock, and it's hard to walk, and you slip and slide all the way. There's an example. Sometimes the trail just disappeared altogether, and you just had to keep trying to go up, regardless of where you found yourself. The weather was changing constantly. We started out warm. We got into cold weather, from sunshine to clouds. It rained on us. It sleeted on us. It snowed on us. This is July the 5th, 2016. And about 3 and some hours later, we finally made it to the top. Quandary Peak, we borrowed somebody's little sign. They were all up there taking pictures, and you see their clothing has changed by that time. We're cold now. Quandary Peak, July the 5th, 2016, 14,000. Somebody help me with 200 and... Well, that's how high Quandary Peak is, and I'm not going to do the whole slideshow for you just because we don't have time. But I've got pictures of the beauty of looking around, and you really feel like you've accomplished something. But the last 500 feet or so of climbing that were just moments of deep despair for me, honestly. You get to where you can see it, and I can get there if I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, but you don't want to put one foot in front of the other anymore. It's just hard, and you just will yourself to get on up there until finally you arrive at the top. Well, now we're at the top, so we call the girls and we go, we're going to be a little bit late on our agreed upon pickup time, but we'll be down probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and no problem there. So pick us up about 12:30, something like that. So we start back down, and going back down, I learned that going down on rocky trails is every bit as hard as going up. In fact, it's harder. I lost 2 toenails to prove how hard it is, because my feet were banging in my cheap boots that I didn't think anything about before I put them on and took them with me. And so you're kind of basically sliding down, mostly on your feet, but sometimes on your rear, falling and trying to keep your balance. And we would keep calling and go, well, we need to revise that estimate a little bit. And so it wound up being as long going down as it was going up, and 3+ hours going down. And the last little bit, even when we got back into the tree line and it kind of leveled out a little bit and smoothed out a little bit, my legs were completely numb. And we got to the bottom, and do you have that? That's my little pedometer that I carry. And on a normal day, I get 7,000 to 10,000 steps on a normal day of walking. That's 3.5 to 4.5 miles. This registered 27,818 steps. By my rough calculation, we walked over 12 miles, up and down. The math of that is about 8 to 10 inches per step, that we were taking, and then including the switchbacks and all. Well, we got back in the car. They picked us up, and they said, well, how was it? I'm on the verge of tears. I'm on the verge of a total breakdown. And I said, honestly, it's the most significant thing I've ever done. And in that moment, it felt exactly like that. The hardest thing I've ever done was the most significant thing I'd ever done. Why? Because it required something of me. Why? Because I didn't quit. When it would have been easier just to stop and start my way back down and say, you go on to the top, tell me what it was like. I kept going. I was caught off guard. I was surprised. I was inexperienced. Other joggers, climbers were running by us in tennis shoes, like waving at us as they went up and down. But to me, in that moment, I could not think of anything in my life that I'd ever done that was more significant than that. Jesus said, life kind of boils down to one of two ways. The bottom line of it is, you're going to go one of two ways. One of those ways is a way that leads to destruction. He called it the road to destruction. And he described it as a way that's easy to get onto. It's got an easy on-ramp. The thing I have reflected on about the easy way that leads to destruction is that, number one, it is a road of our own making. It's not that God made that road and said, here's how many people can I entice to walk it. It is a road that we choose by not choosing the road of life. Just like I tried to say last week, from the beginning, God laid the ancient path was basically one way, not many ways and many choices. It was one way that God set out for us to live, not two ways, not many ways. But if you don't choose the one way that God has set out for you to live, you find yourself on another way of your own making. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. Sin pays its own wage. God doesn't have to pay that wage. Sin pays its own wage. And so you get on that road. And here's the other observation. It's not all immoral people that are walking that road. Now, some people, you can, by observation, choose a life of blatant immorality and wrong living. They don't care who they hurt, what they do, what they steal, what they take. They're blatantly immoral. And clearly people like that are on the road to destruction. But it's a lot more subtle than just that. The road to destruction is a road that initially is enticing to otherwise decent people. It's a road that says, live for yourself. Live for your own gratification and your own self-indulgence. It's a road that says, live for the moment. It's a road that offers shortcuts, or what look like shortcuts, that are simple and easy to take, at least initially. And then you find that shortcuts really get long and get into all kinds of things you hadn't counted on when you try to take them. But it's a road that doesn't mind lying or falsehood or not telling the truth or being truthful with yourself. And you know the greatest lie? The greatest lie is what? Self-deception. The greatest lie is when you're lying to yourself about life. It's not just that you're telling lies, it is you're lying to yourself about who you are and what you want and need out of life and what you're doing with your one and only life. It's a life that values convenience. It's a life that values appearance and looks over substance. All those things to me are characteristics of those who have defaulted into the road that leads to destruction. There is a road and its end is destruction. It's easy to get on. It's full of people who are not just immoral people, hard-living, bad-living people, but people who are otherwise good but value their own self over everything else. Basically, selfishness, I would say, is one of the key characteristics of those who have chosen the road to destruction. Now, here's the thing about Jesus. He doesn't soft pedal anything or sugarcoat anything. Do you notice that about Jesus in the Gospels? You would think Jesus might say, for the sake of salvation, come and follow me. I'll promise you anything and everything to get you to be a disciple, to get you to believe in me. I'll make you immune from adversity and distress. I'll make sure that everything you do is a success. I'll prosper you. And a lot of pastors have played on that, and trying to soft pedal the gospel and soft pedal Jesus. Like it's easy. Just hop on. I'll get you there. I'll carry you along. It's all grace anyway, right? So you really don't have to do that much because I'll do all the work for you. You just get on the train and I'll take you where you need to go. But if you look at the life of Jesus and how he operated, a rich young man says, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, you know the commandments, do those. He goes, I do those. He goes, well, one more thing, go and sell everything that you have and give the money to the poor, and then come and follow me. And it's like, what? Because I have a lot of money. Jesus didn't try to explain anything to him or say, well, in the end, you'll be glad that you let it all go and because you'll get it all back tenfold. He just said, give it all away and then come follow me. The man couldn't follow, and Jesus didn't beg him to. He said to anyone who would be his disciple, you must deny yourself, that is, forget about yourself, divest of yourself, and take up your cross and follow me. Does that sound easy? If you're serious about that, forget about yourself, take up your cross and follow me. Some sacrifice is going to be required. He said in the Sermon on the Mount, from which this little scripture is taken today, these things that I shared with the children, forgive those who persecute you, forgive your enemies, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, have a heart that is as pure as your actions. So be pure in your heart, not just not pure in your actions. Like when he talked about adultery, if you even have it in lust in your heart, it's the same as if you've done it. These aren't easy expectations. This is a hard teacher. And at the end of the day, he says, be ye therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. No sugarcoating, no soft pedaling. And here he says, enter by the narrow gate. Now, why would he want us to have a life that is hard? Because life is hard. And because embracing the struggles and challenges of life, in particular the life of discipleship, is going to lead you to life. It's going to lead you to life. John Mitchell shared with the pastors this week a devotional that he read of Chuck Swindoll's powerful devotional, John. And it gets to the very thing I'm talking about today. It was, what is the difference between cost and worth? And why would we pay a high price for something? And the short answer is because of the worth that it has to us or objectively. There's a relationship between cost and worth. Because life, that is eternal life, is worth the cost. But there is a cost. And how did Jesus describe that life? He said, it's the road that leads to life, but it's hard and narrow. It's off-road. It's lots of climb. There are no shortcuts. There's a lot of adversity. Discipline is going to be required. It's a life that expects, even demands something of you. Perseverance is absolutely essential to this life. Valuing the truth over everything is absolutely essential. Because the truth is hard sometimes at the time, but in the end, the truth what? Sets you free. It's the pathway to liberty. This is the life that values substance over style. This is a life that values content over form. This is a life where, because we haven't been given false promises, we're not shocked or surprised or caught off guard when we face adversity. Because we were told to expect it as we go. Because you see, life itself is hard. And a question came up, do those who take their own life, does that sort of prove that they were on the road to destruction? No, not at all. Because the principalities and powers that govern this present age encompass people on both roads. And so a person who ends their own life could just as much be on the road that leads to life as the road that leads to destruction, because mental illness, emotional illness is powerful and overwhelming to people. And disease is the same way. It catches people on both roads. So none of us are exempt from the things that are liable to afflict us in the course of living a human life. But when you embrace a life of discipleship, you've embraced a whole nother level and a whole nother package of expectations. I mean, read the Sermon on the Mount and take it seriously and live it for a week and see how easy that is to do. To love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you and turn the other cheek. And give to those who beg from you, and do not refuse. And if someone asks for your coat, give them your shirt as well, Jesus said. and tell me, oh, that's the easiest thing in the world to do. Let me ask, let's put it this way. Which is harder? Look at these little pairs. Which is harder, to forgive or begrudge? To forgive someone of something they've done to really hurt you deep down, or just to hold that against them for the rest of your life? To resist temptation or to indulge in it? Which is harder? Which is harder, to give something of yourself away or to keep it for yourself? Which is harder, to pursue a life of fulfillment or to pursue a life of gratification? To stick with it or to quit? To keep trusting like Abraham did when God kept promising the child and there was no evidence that it was going to happen, to keep trusting, or just to forsake and just give up and say, God was never there in the first place? I mean, tell me which is harder. And in the end, would you not say the thing that is harder is the thing that is better? Make me a more complete person. If I find the capacity to forgive, to resist, to give myself away, to pursue fulfillment over instant gratification, to stick with something, to persevere, to keep trusting and not forsake my faith, in the end, would you not say that's probably the better way to go, even though at the time it's the harder way to go? And the great paradox of all this is, that, of course, that the longer you're on the hard road, the easier it gets. I mean, I refer back to the people that were passing us on the road up and back to Quandary Peak. I mean, they had done it more than once, let's say. After a while, it gets easier, not because it is easy, but because you like being on that road. You like a life that challenges you to become something that you're not. You like rising up to adversity. You don't cringe away from it and hide from it and run from it. And the paradox of the road that leads to destruction is that it is a big, wide, 6-lane road. It's easy to get onto. A lot of people are traveling it. But in time, I just had the image of Houston. You know, in time, you start experiencing the equivalent of Houston traffic. And it gets slow, and people get short of nerve and mean, and bad things begin to happen. And what starts out as the easy life can and does indeed become very hard. That's the great paradox of this call that Jesus issues. I said that Quandary Peak was the most significant thing I'd ever done. Hardest thing I'd ever done, the most significant thing I'd ever done. What would it be like at the end to say, the life of discipleship, answering the call of Jesus, was the hardest thing I ever did. But in the end, it was the most significant thing that I ever did. We have a young lady from World Vision today, Liz Mendoza. She's been with us a number of times to share a little bit about the story of World Vision. This is an international organization primarily dedicated to children and children who live in poverty, providing safe water, health care. You know, it's multifaceted ministry, a tremendous ministry. And our church bought into World Vision several years ago, and we've been partners with the people of World Vision for some years now. It's an organization that's not easy. It doesn't put you into situations that are easy. Children that are highly functioning, well taken care of, well provided for, and you just enjoy kind of the cream of the crop. It's hard. Would you say it's hard what World Vision does? Or would you say it's fulfilling what World Vision does? There's cost and there's worth. And in the end, the worth is worth the cost. And Liz, would you come and share with us about this year's challenge?
Well, good morning. Thank you guys for having me. It is always such an honor and privilege to be in this space. Like I said, my name is Liz Mendoza, and I get to be a part of Team World Vision. And first off, I just want to say a huge thank you to this congregation. Over the last couple years of partnering with Team World Vision, this church has raised $42,000, bringing clean water to 844 kids. And so thank you guys. Yeah, give it up. So thank you guys for being yes people. And I am so excited to be here today because today I get to invite you to be a part of the 2019 team, and I get to invite you to do two things. Run or run walk the Run the Alamo half or full marathon and help end the global water crisis. Now, I know some of you may have just tuned me out because I use the words running and marathon in the same sentence, or because I just invited you to do the seemingly impossible. But God has you here today because he has invited you to do the impossible, to do the significant, like Milton is saying. Kids in African communities walk an average of 4 miles to a dirty water source, making them vulnerable to human trafficking and waterborne illnesses. And together, we can change that. You and I can help end that walk. My sponsor girl, Maritek, lives in Shoshogo, Ethiopia, and I got to be in her community a couple years ago. And the moment that we stood on the edge of a polluted riverbank, pouring dirty water into a jerry can, that need became real. It became tangible. It became something that was no longer just a fact or a statistic, but when I looked around, it had a name and a face. 844 million people still lack access to clean water, but that number used to be 1 billion. The work that we are doing together is making a difference, and it's changing communities just like Maritek's. And today, I want to invite you to say yes. When I first said yes to Team World Vision, I had no idea the magnitude of transformation that was not only going to come for communities like Maritek's, but for my own life as well. Being a part of this ministry has taught me what it means to live in community and tackle the things that the world says are impossible. And today I'm inviting you to say yes to that journey. Immediately after service, we're going to hold a 10-minute info session right here down the front alongside Carly. Myself will be there. And coming to the info session does not commit you to joining the team. It simply just means that you want to find out more about how you can be a part of this team and move your feet on behalf of kids around the world. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Liz, I'm not a runner. Perfect. 80% of our team is completely new to running, so we do a true couch to finish line training program designed for all shapes, all sizes, all abilities. In a second, we're going to watch a video, and there's probably going to be voices of fear that tell you, no way, don't do this, it's too hard. But there may also be a voice inside of you that is telling you to do this, to take on this challenge. And I want to encourage you to step through your fear and say yes just long enough to come to the info session. They might be some of the hardest steps that you have in training, but I guarantee you they're going to change your life and the lives of these communities who need you. So I cannot wait to meet you after service today. Let's watch this video really quick.
God asked him to invite others into the same vision, so he did. Many people felt scared of the unknown. Fear prevailed, and they said no. But many people pushed through that fear, and they said yes. The first year, 100 people said yes. The next year, 400 said yes. Then 1,000, then 2,000. As people said yes to new challenges and to changing the lives of kids and communities in Africa, their own lives started to change in drastic ways.
I started this year. This is my first year. I have only been out of a wheelchair for 2 years now.
In the beginning, I was like,